run this code by calling Python. Oh, let me just click this button. It's going to be easy for me. So as you can see, now I run this code and you see it say server running at localhost 8000. So it's going to grab that Google homepage and then give you back as a response. So web server is always on the internet listening for a request. Welcome to this class. In today's class, we're going to discuss about web server. So if you are here to learn web server, this is the right lesson for you. So sit down, relax, and let's go through it. So here, these are the things that we're going to discuss in this class. We're going to see the analogy of web server using a restaurant analogy. Then we're going to see how web server works. Then the different kind of web server we have on the internet. And then we're going to create our own web server using Python programming. So first of all, maybe you heard it a lot of times, web server, website. So what is web server specifically? Well, when you go to your Google Chrome and you type a name of your website, for example, here is your browser, and then maybe you just write www.google.com.ng and then you press enter. So what is usually happening is your browser is going to make a request to a Google web server and asking for a Google web server for the homepage of Google. Then the Google web server will go on through its bulk of information and look for specifically what you want. That means the Google homepage. It's going to grab that Google homepage and then give you back as a response. So web server is always on the internet listening for a request from a browser. So like I say, we're going to see an example using a restaurant analogy. Assuming you went to a restaurant and you want to buy a food. So when you went to a restaurant, you're going to get a table. Then the first thing you're going to do is you're going to ask a waiter. Or maybe the waiter will come to you and ask, what do you want? So then you're going to tell the waiter, okay, these are the kind of food that I want. Then the waiter will go on to the kitchen and prepare the food for you, and then it's going to bring it back to you. So here is what is happening. You go to the restaurant, assuming you are the browser. So when you go to that restaurant and then waiter approach you and ask you what do you want, the waiter is the HTTP protocol. Is the one that's going to get you the resources you want. So the waiter is going to ask you, okay, what do you want? And you tell him, then he will go to the kitchen and prepare what you want and bring it back to you. So in the other hand, the cooker that usually stay in the kitchen preparing food for people is the web server in our analogy here. So when you come to the restaurant, you are the browser, and then the waiter approach you, which is the HTTP protocol. Then you tell him this is what you want, and then the waiter will go to the kitchen and look for the cooker and ask him, okay, bring this kind of food to me. Then the cooker, which is the web server, will go on and prepare the food and give it back to the waiter, which is the HTTP protocol. Then the waiter will go back to you and give you the food you order. So in this case, you that tell the waiter what you want, which is the HTTP protocol, is the one that you make the request, which is what we call a client. And then the waiter that usually go and backward from you to a cooker, getting sending your request to the cooker and then getting the response and give it back to you, is the HTTP protocol. Is what happening inside your browser, that whenever you type the name of a website, there is behind the scenes a HTTP protocol that take all those information and they move through internet, through switches, server routers, and so on, and go to that web server and look for the resources. When you get it, then it will come back to your computer and give it back to you.
And if you can remember, in our last video, in our last class, we discussed about HTTP protocol, the different kind of type of HTTP protocol that we have, and how you to make a request, and how do you receive a request, and how do you understand that if the request is a good or bad request. We already discussed that, and if you don't know about it, you can go and watch that. So like I said, in summary, you that order something in a restaurant, you are the browser, or I say your computer browser. When you type the name of your website, it's the same thing to a restaurant. You tell the waiter, okay, this is what I want. Then the waiter will go to the kitchen and ask the cooker, okay, give me this kind of food. So the cooker that usually stay in the kitchen is the web server in our analogy. So the web server usually stay on the internet. Whenever you want a website or a homepage of any website, then you ask the web server, then the web server will take that information and send it back to you. So I hope we understand this. So now, since we understand what is web server and also how HTTP protocol help us to communicate with web server, so let's see, we have how web server works before we go to the different kind of web server. How exactly web server works? So if this is your computer, so your computer usually install a web application, which is, for example, like Apache or Nginx or any kind of web server. We have different kind of web server. We have Apache, Lightspeed, Nginx, and so on and so forth. There are many more. So what you usually do when you install that software in your computer, when you run it, it's going to open and start listening. It's like assuming you ask your brother to stay in front of your house. There is someone who's going to bring you a message. So you want your brother to stay in front of your house. When that message comes, then your brother will collect it for you. So your brother will stay in front of your house day and night. He will never leave there until he collect that message. So it's the same thing here inside your computer. When you install an Apache and start running it, it's the same thing to say, okay, now I want you to keep on running, keep on listening until someone come from outside and make a request, and then you serve him. So what you usually did is you're going to your computer already, when it's connected to the internet, is going to have an IP address. Then inside the computer, whenever you run a program and you make that program to start listening, you're going to have something what we call port. So maybe you install Apache and you said, okay, keep on listening on port 8080. This is the default for web server. So what is usually happening, maybe you can have so many software inside your computer running in a different port. Maybe you are running some kind of software and it's running on 532. Maybe you're running another software and it's running on 0427. So you see, you have different kind of software listening for a different request from outside world. But specifically for a web server, this is the port that is running, and then you install it, you run it in your computer, and you start listening for this listening for a request through this port. So when I say this port, it means like if we have something like this, by opening this port, it's like you open a section where something can go inside your computer and then it will come out through that port. So every port that you open inside your computer is going to have a specific number. That's what we call a port number. So you open this port number, this is another port number, also this is another port number. So a single computer can have thousands of applications running with a different port number, and also other people can communicate with your computer as long as you allow that. So here is what happens when a request comes. They will usually communicate with your IP address. Then at the end of your IP address, if we say we have 10.2.4.0, then at the end, sorry, let me write it here. The 0, then at the end, you're going to attach it with the port number. Then you say 8080. So what usually happen here is, this is what you are going to write in your browser. So when you write this, you are telling the internet that you want to access this computer. This is the IP address of the computer, which is this computer on the internet. And when you access the computer, this is the service you want to be served on, which is on 8080. So what is running on 8080 is a web server. So when you type this in your computer address, that the address bar, and you click enter, then on the internet your browser will locate this computer that has this IP address on the internet, which is this computer, and then he will ask the computer to serve the request based on this port number, and then the request will go through this software that is running, which is the web server. Then the web server will do its things. So what you usually did, we're going to look for the request. In the request, there is information that is going to look for the resources, the file that you are looking for, and whatsoever. Then he will check the computer, grab all of those files, and then send it back to you. So usually whatever you make a request, your IP address also attached to that request. So when the web server prepare all your information, then it will use that IP address that you send the request on, then you will send the response back through that IP address. Then when you send the response back, then in your computer, your browser will receive the HTML file and so on, and then it will start rendering all the files. So I hope you understand how web server works. And like I say, at the end, we're going to also create our own web server so that we better understand how it works. So like I said, we have different kind of web server. We have Apache, we have Nginx, and any of those web server has its advantage and disadvantage. So just an assignment for you, can go on and search about those web server and see what the differences between those web server, which web server is better for me to use when I create so kind of application. Which web server is better for me when I create this kind of website. So then at the end, these are, like I said, you have different kind of already explained them. Then we have, so I think that's it. You understand web server and how it works. So now we're going to go on into my computer and we're going to create our own web server. So let's see.
Okay, like I say, we're going to build our own web server. So here it is. Let's go and build our own web server using Python program. So as you can see, this is the code that I use to build a web server. And now if I run this code, this web server is going to start running, and also I can be able to access the website that I combine with this web server through my browser. So if I run this code by calling Python, let me just click this button. It's going to be easy for me. So as you can see, now I run this code, and you see it say server running at localhost 8000. So if I go to my browser and I access 127.8000, and you see it's showing me this hello guys spot. How does that happen? How did he show this this page say hello guys? Okay, so let me go back to the code and explain everything to you. So I hope now you understand how the web server works. So as you can see here, if you look, it show my request, the request that I made to this web server. Say the request for getting default resources, you can see showing / that's the default, and then in the version of the HTTP, which is HTTP 1.1. And what's the status code? The status code is 200, which is okay. So if I make another request, but this time around I will put like / and I say home /home. Then what did we see? See error response, which is error 404 not found, message file, and so on. So let's go back to the server and see the request. So as you can see, this is the request that we made. This is the request I made, and you say the code 404, which is 404 means not found. If you can remember in our last tutorial about HTTP, I told you the status code, they are separated into 4. We have 200, 300, 400, and 500. So anything within the range of 200 is okay and success. Anything in the range of 300 is a redirection. That means maybe taking resources from another server and so. And anything in the range of 400 to 499 is a client error. That means I'm the one that make the error. And anything within the 500 is a server error. So as you can see, it's telling me it doesn't have that kind of resources. The reason why it's saying that it doesn't have that kind of resources is because I did not give it the resources. But let me add another one by creating new file, and I say about .html, and then I will put the HTML code inside. Save this. I will just write this is a test. This is a test. So now if you go back to our browser and make a request, instead of /home.com, I will just say about. That's the name of the file .html, and now we're going to see it. You see, showing this, it is exactly what I write in that HTML. So this is the server, the web server. The web server is running 247 and it's waiting for a request. As you can see, up to now it's waiting for a request. The moment request come, then the web server will go and look for that resources that you are trying to get. You see, say I make a get request to the web server telling I want this file. So since it's already have this file, this is the file about.html, as you can see it. Since already have this file, then it can be able to take it and give it back to me as a response. But here, as you can see, it doesn't have the file. That's why we get 404 and showing the request that I made. So how did I create this web server? Well, it's very simple. In Python programming, this is come with Python built-in. Whatever you hear the word built-in means something that already come with Python program. If I ask you now, you have head, you have here, you have ear. Since when you are born, you already have them. So that we can call them built-in. That means they are built in to you. So it's the same thing with Python programming. Since the creation of Python already have this stuff, so we don't need to go and pip install this and that. We just have to import it and start using with it. So these are the things that I import that only going to make me create my web server. The HTTP server, this is the exactly web server class, and then this is the simple HTTP request handler. It's also a class that will handle the request that I made. All these requests that you are seeing that I made, this is the object that taking care of it. While this HTTP server is what is exactly the web server that I'm talking about, that will stay on the internet and keep on listening on incoming request. When we get an incoming request, then this HTTP server is going to take the request and give it to this simple HTTP request handler, and this HTTP request handler will do its thing and give you back the response. So how do we create this HTTP server? Well, the first thing you have to do is you're going to give it where we can access that HTTP server, which is, you're going to give it the IP address and also the port number. Like I explained in a blackboard, the IP address is used to access the computer, while the port number is used to access the exact HTTP server. If we have another program running on this port 800, so it will not going to work. The moment we are trying to run the server will say the port is already in use. So here, as you can see, we said the IP address is a local host. That means we're going to do it within our computer, and this is the port number that we're going to listen on, which is 8000. So if you look at my browser, you can see this is the port that I'm working on, which is 8,000. And then these two things is going to create the HTTP server, the location where we can get the server and how the server will handle request. And then we assign an object to it, which is this class. Then we assign the object which is called server. Then we print, okay, server running at this location, which is we can access it in this location. And then we set server.sub forever. This is like a while loop that is going to continue running. It will not going to stop until we go and stop it by ourselves. So to stop it is very simple. Just hold Control and C. That's it. You see showing keyboard interrupt. Just by holding Control and C is going to stop it. So this server, this is the object that you created our own web server, and then we said .sub forever. This is the method associated to that class, sub forever. So this sub forever is going to run, get up the server and start running it. Then it will keep on listening to incoming requests. Forever, he will keep on listening to incoming requests. It will never ever stop. So when we make a request, as you can see, these are the files that we have. So this index.html, by default, when you make a request to a web server, is going to look for a index.html. So if you do not put anything, this is the index.html, this slash. But if you put the name of your file, like I said, about.html, then it will go on and start looking for that file. So in this case, it's going to look for this file. But if I do not put this about.html, guess what? It's going to give me this file. So if we look inside this file, you see, is the file that I created and put hello guys. And now if I even made a changes, for example, the paragraph, see, and now let's run our server again, and let's go back. See, our server start running. So if I go back, like I said, if I do not specify any file, it's going to look for, automatically it's going to look for index.html. So you see, it's look for the index.html. I add something to this file, but it didn't work. Said please subscribe. Okay, so let me refresh it. I see. So now you see it made the request and you grab the file. So you see, I did not specify and tell him this is the file I want. No, I did not say any of that. What I just say, I just write the port number and the IP address, and it automatically responds with index.html. So that's why when you come to deploying your website, you have to make sure that the main page of the website is saved as index.html. And if I want to access another page, I have to specify the file name. Then the web server will go and look for that file and give me back as a response. So in this case, we don't have any file other than about.html. And if we try to look for another file, for example, we say service.html, then we're going to get an error, see error response, because we don't have that file in our computer, or I say in within our web server. So you can see here, we don't have that file within our web server. So it definitely is going to respond with error. So let's see, let's create another file and see whether our web server will give us a response to that file. I will say test. So this file, it doesn't have an extension, but we just call it test. And you see, let me write a text and say this is a test to web server. Then we save it. After we save it, let's go to our web server and ask our web server to look for this file called test and give us as a response. So now we run it. You see, it didn't give us the file render to the server, but it gave us the file as a downloaded file. You can see it here. If I run it again, it will just send me the file instead of giving me back to the browser and render it. As you can see, also again get it, because the browser doesn't understand the file, so it's not going to try to render it, but rather it's going to just give us try to save it our computer. So now let's change it and give it extension. Let's give it .text. So now we give it .text. Let's go back and set .text. So you see, since now the browser know the file, so the browser can say, okay, let me render it, because I know the extension. So that's why we see it render it. You can see here it's showing this is a test web server. So I hope you understand how web server work, how to create a web server using Python programming. And if you want to become a good backend developer and a really good backend developer, well, subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to show you a lot of stuff related to backend development, how to create a web application, how to deploy it to the internet, how to scale your website to thousands upon millions of users, and how to create your own SaaS application. See you in our next video.